He tried to scare me. I made sure he regretted it. I'd always been a bit of a stickler. Details mattered. In law, they were everything. That's what I told myself as I double-checked the Henderson file, even though it was assigned to Mark and technically none of my concern. Mark Henderson was a sore subject around the firm. A former client, he'd felt he'd been wronged in a breach of contract case years ago. He was always calling, always complaining. Most people avoided him. Mark, the senior partner, usually palmed the calls off to someone else. Today, it was me. "Just tell him we're reviewing his file," Mark said, breezing past my desk on his way to lunch. "And try to keep him off the phone for more than 5 minutes, for God's sake." Easy for him to say. Henderson was intense. But as I read through the case notes, I started to understand his frustration. A crucial deadline had been missed. A motion hadn't been filed on time. It wasn't a blatant act of malice, but it was careless. And it had cost Henderson. The thing that got me was that I could swear I had filed the paperwork on time. And my digital records indicated that I had. I found Mark after lunch, leaning against the water cooler, chatting with a couple of associates. He had that easy, effortless charm that made clients love him and underlings resent him just a little. "Mark," I said, holding the file. "About the Henderson case." He sighed, a dramatic, put-upon sigh. "What is it, Sarah? He's not still ranting, is he?" "No, sir. I was just reviewing the file, and it looks like the motion wasn't filed by the deadline." He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something, annoyance, crossing his face. So, I was wondering if we had a record of the extension request or anything?" He chuckled, a dismissive sound. "Sarah, relax. It was years ago. Probably just a clerical error. Don't worry your pretty little head about it." He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more condescending than friendly. "Focus on your tasks, okay? But sir, the digital record suggests that the paperwork was filed on time." The smile vanished. His eyes narrowed. "Look, Sarah," he said, his voice dropping a few degrees. "I appreciate your thoroughness, but some things are best left alone, you understand?" I did. Or I was starting to. He wasn't worried about Henderson, he was worried about himself, and he was warning me to shut up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mark's veiled threat kept replaying in my mind. Some things are best left alone. What did that even mean? Was he actually threatening me? I tossed and turned, picturing my career dissolving before my eyes. I was a paralegal, not a lawyer. I had bills to pay. I couldn't afford to lose my job. But the thought of Henderson, a man wronged by carelessness and now being dismissed, kept nagging at me. And then there was the digital record of having filed the paperwork that continued to nag at me. The next day at work was uncomfortable. Mark was everywhere. Suddenly, he was micromanaging my every move, hovering over my shoulder, pointing out minor errors, and generally making my life miserable. He assigned me extra work, pulling me off the cases I was already working on, and giving me the dregs. Document review, endless filing, tasks usually relegated to interns. He even moved my desk to a cramped corner near the restrooms. Emily, a junior associate and one of my few friends at the firm, noticed immediately. "What's going on, Sarah?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Mark's being a complete jerk." I tried to brush it off, just a little stressed, I guess. But Emily wasn't buying it. He moved her desk. "And I heard him telling Ms. Johnson you were struggling to keep up." "That's bull." David, a senior paralegal who'd been at the firm for decades, also picked up on the change. He was a quiet, observant man, a mentor to many of us. He called me into his office late that afternoon. "Sarah," he said, closing the door. "What's happening with Mark?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I think he's trying to get rid of me." David nodded slowly. "And you think it has something to do with the Henderson case?" I told him everything. About the missed deadline, my suspicion about the filing, and Mark's warning. David listened intently, his expression grim. "Document everything, Sarah," he said. "Every interaction, every assignment, every comment. Keep a record of everything. And make sure you have backups of the digital record I suspect you are referencing." "But what can I do?" I asked, feeling helpless. "He's a senior partner. I'm just a paralegal." "Sometimes," David said, a twinkle in his eye, "the little guy has more power than he thinks." That night, I started my log. Date, time, description of the incident. It felt empowering, somehow. Like I was taking control, even in a small way. I also looked up the digital record and saw that it was backed up to the cloud. The next few weeks were a blur of stress and anxiety. Mark continued his campaign of harassment, making my life a living hell. He'd walk by my desk just to rearrange my papers. He scheduled meetings I wasn't invited to, then criticized me for not being prepared. I started having trouble sleeping. I lost my appetite. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells. Emily was my lifeline. She brought me coffee, listened to my rants, and helped me organize my growing stack of evidence. "He's doing this because he's scared," she said one day as we ate lunch in the park across from the office. "You rattled him, Sarah. That's why he's lashing out." Her words gave me a sliver of hope. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't imagining things. Maybe Mark was actually afraid. I decided to dig deeper into the Henderson case. I spent my evenings poring over old files, searching for any clue, any piece of information that could shed light on what really happened. I found it. Buried in a box of archived documents, I discovered a memo from Mark to another attorney, discussing the Henderson case. In the memo, Mark admitted that he had missed the deadline due to a personal emergency, and that he had decided to bury the mistake rather than admit it to the client. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. The smoking gun. I knew I couldn't go directly to the managing partner with this. Mark would deny it, and it would be my word against his. I needed more. I remembered David's advice. The little guy has more power than he thinks. I decided to contact Henderson. It was a risk, but I felt I had no other choice. I tracked him down through an old address in the firm's records and called him under the guise of wanting to update the archive information on his case. "Mr. Henderson," I said, trying to sound professional and detached. "I'm Sarah Miller from Smith Jones. We're just updating our files on closed cases, and I wanted to confirm some information about your case against," I paused, "against Apex Industries." He sighed, a weary sound. "That case. Don't even get me started." I steered the conversation carefully, asking about his experience with the firm. He was hesitant at first, but as I listened to his story, his frustration, his anger, his sense of betrayal, I realized he had every right to be upset. "They just didn't seem to care," he said. After a while, Mark stopped returning my calls. I felt like they just wanted me to go away. I gently probed for details about the missed deadline. He remembered it clearly. "That was the turning point," he said. "After that, it all went downhill." I didn't reveal what I knew, but I subtly hinted that there might be more to the story than he realized. "Mr. Henderson," I said, "I can't make any promises, but I'm going to look into this further. I'll be in touch." The next day, Mark summoned me to his office. His face was red with anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Sarah?" he roared, slamming the door shut. I stood my ground, trying to remain calm. "I'm not sure I understand, sir." "Don't play dumb with me," he snarled. "I know you contacted Henderson. I know you've been snooping around in old files. You're trying to undermine me, aren't you?" "I'm just trying to do my job, sir," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Your job is to do what I tell you to do," he said, looming over me. "And I'm telling you to drop this, now, or you'll regret it." The threat was no longer veiled. It was direct, explicit. He was going to destroy me if I didn't back down. But something inside me snapped. I was done being intimidated. I was done being afraid. "I can't do that, sir," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I know what you did. I know about the missed deadline, and I know you tried to cover it up." His face contorted with rage. He took a step towards me, his fists clenched. "You little, I wouldn't," I said, holding up a hand. "I have copies of everything. The memo, my log of your harassment, everything. And if anything happens to me, they'll be sent to the managing partner and the State Bar Association." I pulled a thick file from my bag and placed it on his desk. "Here's everything." He stared at the file, his eyes wide with disbelief. He knew he was caught. I had anticipated his threat. I had made copies of everything, including backups of the digital record. I had also sent a copy to Emily, with instructions to send it to the managing partner if I disappeared. "I'm also in touch with Henderson," I added. "He's considering filing a complaint with the Bar Association." He sank into his chair, defeated. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "Oh, but I would," I said, the cold satisfaction spreading through me. "You tried to scare me, Mark. Now it's my turn." I turned and walked out of his office, leaving him to face the consequences of his actions. The next few days were a whirlwind. The managing partner launched an internal investigation. I was interviewed by the ethics committee. David and Emily testified on my behalf, corroborating my account of Mark's behavior. Henderson, armed with the information I had given him, filed a formal complaint with the State Bar Association. Other former clients came forward with similar stories of negligence and intimidation. Mark was placed on administrative leave. His career, his reputation, everything he had worked for was crumbling before his eyes. A week later, the firm announced that Mark had resigned. The State Bar Association suspended his license to practice law. Henderson filed a lawsuit against him. I was called into the managing partner's office. He commended me for my courage and integrity. He offered me a promotion and a significant raise. "You did the right thing, Sarah," he said. "You saved this firm from a serious scandal." That evening, I met Emily and David at our usual after-work haunt. We raised our glasses in a toast to justice, to courage, and to the downfall of a bully. I continued to work at the firm, now viewed as a valuable and respected member of the team. I was no longer afraid. I had stood up to Mark, and I had won. One night, a few months later, I was working late reviewing a complex case file. I smiled, confident in my abilities and unafraid to stand up for what was right. I wasn't a stickler for detail. I was meticulous. And I was good at what I did. I was ready for anything. The legal world was tough, but so was I. And those two were a match made in heaven, or maybe hell, depending on which side you were on. I had stared into the void, and instead of blinking, it did.